Today's session on the digital listing presentation. We're going to talk about how to get more listings in today's highly competitive market of real estate sellers. Joining me today is Gary Wise, who's co-founder of the Paperless Agent. And something about Gary is that everything we're going to talk about today is really grounded in his experience. For those of you who don't know Gary, of course, I think many of you do. Gary he's not only is he the co-founder of the Paperless Agent, he's built a successful real estate practice and is the person who literally cracked the code for being able to use mobile devices for working with home buyers and home sellers. And today we're going to dive into, well, you know what, Gary, let's take a look at what we're going to cover today.
Let's do it.
All right, so all I got to do is figure out how to advance my screen, and that'll happen.
Use the mouse.
There we go. Okay, so in this training, we're going to cover how to overcome the market forces affecting real estate professionals from getting housing inventory today. This is, Gary, something that I know you're seeing and experiencing firsthand, so we're going to take a look at some data. We're also going to talk about some real-world experience on what are these market forces that are affecting you so that you can start to overcome them. I think, Gary, it's always the first step to be able to overcome any type of challenge is understanding and awareness, right? So the next thing we're going to get into is how you can get an instant competitive advantage using a digital listing presentation. We oftentimes here at the Paperless Agent talk about how you can use technology to get that instant competitive advantage, whereas a lot of other types of advantages that you might want to create in your marketplace may take a significant amount of time, a significant amount of money, but you can use technology. It's relatively easy if you're using the right technologies and you're using them correctly. And we're going to show you how to do that today. And then we're going to cover, it says 7 elements of the effective digital listing presentation, Gary. We're only going to have time for 5 today.
Yeah, I didn't know how you thought we'd be able to cover all of those, but.
So they're good, and these are 5 effective elements, not just of a digital listing presentation, but for any type of listing presentation that you guys do. Now, here's what's going to happen. After this training is done, here's what you're going to be able to do. You're going to know what's affecting your ability to find housing inventory and increase your market share of the inventory that's coming on the market. You're going to understand how to attract home sellers by anticipating exactly what they want and placing it in your marketing, as well as being able to cover it within your listing presentation. And then we're going to show you how you can create and present a digital listing presentation that will impress sellers to convert more of those listings and ultimately to get more referred listings. So here we go.
I like that low-hanging fruit, the referrals.
The referrals.
Yes.
I mean, you have your entire business is, well, not the entire business, but a big chunk of your business is coming from referred business. And what's interesting is you've gotten to the point, Gary, where it is luxury referred listings. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as well.
Well, those are even better.
Those are even better.
Like you want to plus that referral. It's a luxury listing. That's the key.
Awesome. All right. So Gary, let's dive into this. The market forces affecting. Excuse me. Let's dive into the market forces affecting folks today. Now these are
some stats that you've been researching this data, and so you're responsible for bringing this to us. Chris does a lot of research for all of us at Goodlife Realty, and now we're able to share that with you. And I think you'll find this highly valuable.
Yeah. So. All of the data, you guys can, if you want to, you can research this on your own, but let us save you some time. The stats we're going to share today are on this slide specifically, come from the National Association of Realtors. And so, here's a couple of facts that I think all of us really need to be aware of. The inventory of newly constructed homes is essentially at a 50-year low. Now, I know, Gary, a lot of folks might be saying, well, what does new construction have to do with me? I'm involved with sale.
Everything.
And everything has to do because, the availability of new homes, when there's not that option, where do people go? They go to the existing inventory. And what happens to that? Starts to drive the prices up because of the basic supply and demand, laws of economics, right? So furthermore, new home construction has reached the 3rd highest level in the past 66 months. Yet it is so insufficient to satisfy demand, meaning that, new home construction is on the rebound. It's better than it has been in, almost 7 years, 6 years, and yet it's radically insufficient to be able to produce the demand that's there, that people want for homes. In fact, it's so insufficient that even if we were to increase, if we could magically, wave a magic wand, Gary, and increase housing starts by 50%, that would barely relieve the inventory shortage. And that's impossible. You could never just wave a wand and all of a sudden have 50% more housing starts.
Well, no. Let's see. We have the city and municipalities to deal with. We have developers who have to develop the land and prep them for building. Then they have to sell them to the builders and entitle them. It's a long process. And I don't know about where you guys are, but here in Austin, that's an 18-month process. If I, as a developer, say, you know what, I'm going to go develop this land, it takes 18 months before I can even break ground.
Wow. Before anything even starts.
I can't do anything.
And that's before the building takes place, before things go on the market. So you're looking at a couple of years to be able to change this trajectory. All right. So here's another stat for month supply, and as testimony or testament or proof that this is affecting the market. Month supply has dropped from 40% on a national level between 2011 and 2013. It has dropped 40%. So it went from 8.3 months to 4.9 months. And of course, month supply is if you take the current amount of inventory at the current sales rate, and if that were to, how long it would take to sell all the current amount of inventory based on that current sales rate. And so what we're seeing with that, interpret that is, this is one of those market forces that's affecting our ability. Now, like it or not, it's important to know. Right? This is important to know because if you just go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to go find housing inventory, I'm just going to try harder, I'm just going to try do whatever that case may be, you're going to start hitting against a wall if you don't recognize what's affecting. Here's the other thing. This is data that you can share with your customers. If you have someone who maybe they want to sell their home and buy another home, or maybe they're a buyer, Gary, they should be aware of these dynamics, because no more sitting on the fence or driving around for 8 weeks looking for a place. Let them know that there's market forces affecting their ability to find a new home. And if you're listing, if it's someone who wants to sell their home and move into another, this is good news if they're selling, but then they also should be aware of.
Well, one thing, these are not stats for stats' sake.
Right.
These are stats that I'm using when I'm meeting with my buyers and sellers. So I'm hoping that you guys are writing these down, because these are valuable statistics that you can use, and you'll see in a minute how it totally ties into a full digital listing presentation, and how you can use this in working with buyers to incite that urgency, because these numbers, they don't lie. Like, these are statistics. People believe these statistics because they're real, and they do affect our business, but it also can help you as a realtor to produce a better experience for your customer.
Well, and to create that urgency, whether it's someone who wants to sell their home and move, or just someone who's looking to buy a new home, they have to understand that this is taking place. Now, by the way, by sharing this type of information with the people that you're working with, it takes you out of the bearer of bad news, right? This is, and we'll talk about this later, but you're not the market. And you want to be the messenger of the market. You have to communicate what the market needs and what the market demands are. But you can use this information to be able to show the folks that you're working with, hey, this is what's happening in the market. Okay. Now here's another thing that's really affecting everybody, Gary. Realtor membership is on the rise, right? So we are already, if you guys look at the previous peak, and you can see it's starting up again. Now, Gary, you were in this business in 2002, 2003, 2004 when realtor membership swelled. What was that like? I mean, do you see a lot of the same dynamics?
Well, so here's what happens, because at the time I thought, oh, this won't affect me. I have my business base, and most of these people coming into the industry are brand new. So what do I have to fear? Right? I've been in the business for a long time. I don't. This is fine.
No, we weren't worried about it.
Woo. The thing is that buyers and sellers don't understand that some of these people are brand new. At least they didn't at the time. Factors have changed, and we're actually going to talk about that during the webinar today, of how you can use some technology to actually validate why people should hire you and not somebody else, especially while this is on the rise. Now, the fact of the matter is that competition is competition, and what this generates is a lot more fierce competition in the marketplace. I mean, imagine, if you will, lions out in Africa. and they take down an animal. And it's a small den, and there's just 3 of them that need to feast on this. It's not that competitive. But boy, you get 10, 15, 20 of them there trying to go after the same animal. It gets fierce, and make no mistake about it. I've seen realtors act that fierce.
Well, I think this, to bottom line this, the lack of housing inventory is going to continue to place pressure on you when it comes to finding inventory and generating listings this year. I think, Gary, you're seeing this. You go out and you just went. You're constantly going on to listing appointments. You were on one just this morning, in fact, or you had a closing this morning for a listing, which was actually the largest closing of your career, right?
That's correct.
And so, but rewind. What was it, about 45 days or so? Rewind, and whether it's that listing presentation or the other ones that you've gone on recently, what's different today?
Well, we talk about this a lot, and it's fierce in Austin. And I don't know where you guys are, but tell me if this is what it's like where you are. Go over to the question section and say yes if your marketplace is like this. If you are in fierce competition for listings, even if it's a past client. For example, 45 days ago, I go on this listing appointment. This is a past client of mine. I had sold him 3 properties in the past. I sold him the property that he wanted to list. And so I went in and he said, hey, Gary, I just want to let you know, no offense. Man, when people start out when people start out with that, it's like, hey, Gary, no offense. I'm like, oh boy, here comes a hammer. No offense, but we're going to be interviewing 2 other luxury specialists because this is a really high dollar property, and we need to make sure that we get the top dollar for it. And it was fierce. I had to go in there, and I used everything we're going to talk about today to secure that listing in this fierce marketplace. So let's take a look. Oh, I'm saying yes everywhere. Look at this. I mean, we have we're at 1,000 people on the webinar here, and almost everybody's answering yes.
Well, it's not surprising.
Doug just said, dog eat dog. Indeed. Yep.
Well, and that's, I would continue. I would expect that to continue to increase. I mean,
Can you go back to that last slide with this?
Sure.
With this?
I don't know if I can, Gary. To be honest with you, I don't know how to. If I can
right click.
Right click.
No, not gonna work.
Wait, that was the wrong mouse. Sorry, guys. I got 2.
There we go.
There we go.
I mean, if you guys can see this, look at the spike that's about to happen. This is happening again. And so yes, I keep saying, man, I'm saying yes everywhere. Yeah, it's getting more and more fierce, so it's only going to get worse.
Now, one of the things that I think is interesting, back in 2002, 3, and 4, when the Realtor membership was growing, did you have the same competition where you would go to a referred listing and be competing for that referred listing, or is that kind of a new dynamic? Or was it the same back then as well?
Anytime the market is flooded with competition with realtors and listings are scarce, you're going to have that. Now, back in that time frame, listings were nowhere near as scarce, right? So the pie was actually bigger.
Well, back then, we didn't have that additional market force of the new housing starts, right?
Well, no, nowhere near that. So the scarcity was nothing like it is now.
So I mean so if you guys have been in this business a while, know that this is what's going to be different. We didn't have the same new home construction shortage that we have today, and so for the foreseeable future, it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the tactics here of what folks can use to get to convert more of the listings that you have, to get more referred listings, and ultimately to be able to increase and grow your business. The first section that we're going to cover today is what we dubbed, I didn't put quotes on here, but if you could say, reading your seller's mind. We're going to dive into what exactly that means, because here's a fact. You can't change the amount of inventory on the market, but you can change your share of what you get.
Yeah. And
furthermore, you can prevent people from getting what's rightfully yours.
So back to the pie incident. The pie is going to stay the same for the foreseeable future, simply because there's scarcity. There's very few properties that we can sell. Your piece of the pie is what you have control over.
So here's what we want to share with you. the first thing you want to be able to do so that you can increase your share is to understand what sellers want, so you can predict and anticipate their needs while they're searching for an agent, before they've even decided who they're going to work with, is to understand what they want. And we're going to provide you with some real statistics, again, from the National Association of Realtors, because they do a lot of interviews and they do a lot of surveying of home buyers and sellers. We're going to couple that with our real-world experience. I'm here with Gary and with our agents over at Goodlife Realty. The other thing you want to be able to do to increase your market share is to know what the hidden criteria are that home sellers use when choosing a real estate agent to list and market their home. Now, I say hidden criteria because, Gary, you know this, your clients will not tell you things that are on their mind. They're having that conversation in their own mind, and they won't tell you what they really want sometimes.
Not all the time. And in fact, even when you probe and ask, wow, that's a, can you tell me more about that? They're not always going to tell you exactly what's on their mind for several different reasons. Like this friend and past client, he wasn't going to tell me who he was interviewing. It was like, I'd rather not share all of that information with you.
A lot of it, we develop friendships with our customers.
Yeah.
And so they might not want to hurt our feelings.
Well, that's a huge deal. Yeah.
I mean, they might just think, I don't want to hurt their feelings, not realizing that they're hurting our feelings in the process. You're hurting my feeling and my heart by doing this.
It's like, no offense, but and
I'm taking offense now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, so we're going to share what those hidden criteria are. We're also going to show you how you can create that instant competitive advantage using simple yet powerful technology. And that's my favorite type of technology is the type that's simple but very powerful in impact, Gary. And then, of course, a lot of you probably joined us today because you want to learn how to use your listing presentation that will set you apart. And here's what's cool about our listing presentation is that it has the power to close, meaning close and move on to the next step, to list that home, to get that home sold and get that person into the next stage or wherever we're going to go. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Gary, let's dive into some of the stats here. What do home sellers want most from their agent? Now this again comes from the National Association of Realtors. Look at the top thing is to help seller market home to potential buyers. Now that might seem like a really obvious thing. Well, of course that's what they want.
Right.
The question is, are you saying that to them? Meaning that they may not, that might seem so obvious to us, but does the prospective client that we're meeting with, do they know that that's what we're going to do? Because they don't understand anything about the home buying or selling process. But if 25% say that they want the real estate professional to help market the home to potential buyers, is that reflected? Right? Is that being reflected in our marketing that we put out there long before they even contact us?
Yep.
Or is that being reflected while we're even having the conversation? I think a lot of times, Gary, I mean, you get to coach our agents here. Mm-hmm. And when people are new, a lot of times they don't know that this is what they have to share, right?
Well, and that's the whole thing is that we talk about this all the time is that if you don't know everything that you need to share with your client, what happens is that there's a gap in their head in the story. So they don't have all the information. So what do? They fill that gap with a story that they make up in their head.
So here's a common one that I hear. People might say, I'm all about providing service to my customers. And you might say, hey, I have, great service for my customers. And here's what could happen in your client's mind. Oh, you know what? So-and-so probably would be really, they'd provide great service, but they might not be able to sell the home. Maybe they're not really good at marketing, or maybe they won't really know what it takes, right? And so actually we've got some interesting information that we just shared with our entire team here on what people want when it comes to, do they want sales or do they want service? Right here, we're going to talk about the difference and why do so many consumers want the top selling person, not necessarily the top service person. That's for a little bit down. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the next slide. But let's talk about this a little bit further. So the first thing that they want you to do is to help market their home to potential buyers. They want you to sell the home within a specific time frame. Again, something that you have to be able to show is, hey, we can get it done in a specific time frame. In our listing presentation, we're going to cover the slide to show you exactly how to do this.
Well, and these stats are critical because if we don't know these stats, how can you effectively design your message to your customer? How can you effectively design your listing presentation to your customer to address the concerns, because if you don't know their concerns, you don't know what to do.
And here's what might happen. You might ask them these questions during an initial consultation, but these things might not come out, right? These might be things that are so obvious to you, and they might not just share this stuff. And there might be, and in our next slide, we're going to show you why they may not share, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They might not want to say, if you do not communicate that you're going to be able to market the home, get it sold within a specific time frame, and get it priced competitively. If they don't think you can do that because you haven't mentioned it in your marketing and you haven't mentioned in your listing presentation, rather than ask you if you will do that, they'll just assume you don't. That's that gap, right? That void. They fill it with the worst concern. And if the question is, they may not want to introduce conflict into the conversation by asking, well, will you market the home to potential buyers? Because if they think that you can't, rather than ask the question, they'll just say, you know what, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. We're
Oh boy, that's the language you don't want to hear.
All right, well, let's, I think we covered here what the sellers want. Now let's get into that hidden criteria. What are the hidden criteria that they probably won't share with you? Right, because this is stuff that's it's very personal in a sense. But look at that first, the largest share of what the most important factor in choosing an agent. So this again comes from the National Association of Realtors by surveying home sellers, and the question was, what was the most important factor in choosing your real estate professional?
Now this is interesting because the reputation of the agent. You know how you used to gauge it back in the old way of doing business. Your clients would gauge this by the referral. Right? Oh, who referred this person? How much do we trust that person? And what was their experience with this person?
Well, times are changing.
Yes, they have.
Times are changing. And we'll look at this. We got some interesting information to share with you folks where referrals are powerful. Gary, you love referred business, but it's interesting how online, the internet has added all these new dynamics that make, I would say, that make competing for a referral, or what the information available online competes against a referral. I mean, it's fascinating. So 35% of the folks say that the reputation of the agent was the most important factor. I think the question to ask yourself, because everyone's going to say, well, I have a great reputation. My clients love me. Well, what if I went out and talked to your client? I wonder what they would say. If I called them and say, hey, Gary, or hey, Joe, you work with Gary. He's never going to find this out, by the way, but what would you say about Gary's reputation? Now, most of you, I'm sure, are going to have a good reputation. The question is, and you go back to the last slide, is incorporated into your reputation the fact that you're going to help the seller market the home to potential buyers, that you're going to be able to price that home competitively, that you're going to be able to get it sold within a specific time frame? Because those are the things that are important to them. Right? Those are the things that they want. Here's the other thing that I would ask is, what are you intentionally doing to build your reputation? Because if you don't have an intention from both marketing and in your conversations and in your message, you're not really doing anything to intentionally build your reputation. Now, Gary, I love the story. Gary has told me his story about how he began the process of moving to become a luxury agent, for lack of a better term. But for those of you who don't know, Gary typically he will only work with business. He'll refer anything out that's under $1 million or $1.5 million. He'll refer that to one of the agents on our team. But it hasn't always been that way, right? It's not like one day Gary woke up and all of a sudden he's a luxury listing agent. No, this took a process of modifying your reputation. Can you briefly tell folks how you did that?
Well, I didn't have the money. I was 22 years old. I didn't have the money to get into to play with the big boys and join a $60,000 initiation country club to actually get where they are. So I thought, how do I increase my average sales price? My average sales price when I first started selling real estate was really low. It was in the $150,000 per transaction, and I just thought, wow, that's a lot of work for a commission like that. And so what I did is I started building a strategy around how do I get around and build trust with those who own the higher dollar properties and are buying them. And so what I did is I actually went out and I joined charitable foundations and volunteered on their boards for the fundraisers. By the way, this is so easy to do. You just contact whoever is chairing the fundraiser and say, gosh, this is what I'm doing, I'm a real estate agent. I have a lot of contacts. Perhaps I can help you draw more people there. Plus, you can have my labor for free for this fundraiser. How can I help? Then your name gets on the bill, where that's handed out at the fundraiser. Everybody knows about who you are at that point. You get to mix and mingle with those people. That's how I got in front of them.
And so it was, in that case, it was almost like the law of association, where you started to develop this reputation for working with high-end customers because you were spending so much time with them at charitable functions, and you would run into opportunities to get business and then turn that into the reputation that you have and the reputation that you have today of, a lot of you might be thinking, wow, referring anything under 1.5 million, that seems crazy. But when you have an abundance of high-priced listings, that's what you do because you don't have time to serve everybody.
That's right.
So that hidden criteria. I think the other one, by the way, the reputation that you have is the biggest important factor, the most important factor. By half is the agent honest and trustworthy, and that probably goes hand in hand. But here, one of the things we had a training yesterday with Jason Edwards over at Goodlife Realty, who runs our brokerage, and he was sharing with us that in studies, people, especially people who have higher average disposable income, prefer to want to work with a salesperson, not a service person, right? That was actually the research done from Nordstrom's. They found that people always wanted a top salesperson.
Top salespeople.
So use this criteria.
And you know why?
Why?
If you're a top salesperson, that is proof of knowledge.
Right. It's proof that you can provide service because people keep coming back to you. All right. So let's keep moving along here and talk about why digital. Now, one of the things that we shared when we started talking about we're going to do this training, online training, it's going to be on how to use a digital listing presentation. But I think we have to ask the question, Gary, why digital? And quite frankly, you've talked about this for some time, that it was going to happen, that it has already happened.
It happened earlier than they anticipated.
But mobile has surpassed desktop. Mobile usage, mobile search, all of things mobile, people accessing the internet and using a mobile device versus a desktop surpassed it last year. And so now, it has become more ubiquitous, more acceptable, more preferred, I guess is really the term, is preferred to use mobile versus a desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody of those who are paperless agents who've gone through our training, we talk a lot about that, but this is a fact, right? It's not a trend. This is a fact. This is a shift in consumer behavior of using mobile devices versus a desktop. And furthermore, I love this slide. This was a study done by a collaboration with Google and the National Association of Realtors. And they talk about how the housing consumer is more mobile. Now, this particular slide specifically addresses someone who's shopping for a home. I just want to call attention to something, that 21% of new home shoppers they located a listing agent via their mobile device, right? And so this is just a testament and proof how our consumer is more mobile in a lot of cases than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you talk a lot about how we have to not just catch up, but stay ahead of our consumer if we expect our consumer to view us as an expert. But then this is testament to that. So I think that they're going to call a brokerage, they're going to locate a listing agent. Of course, they're going to consume information, but they are going to also take action. They're not just going to research; they're going to take action.
Yeah, and quickly.
And take it quickly. So, and the last slide on why digital is, tablet use is growing. That's why we prefer to use the tablet devices.
I love this. This is total proof. Like, I know a lot of people whose laptops are dying. They're not even replacing the laptop. They're just buying a better tablet.
They're just getting, and the quality of tablets are getting so much more powerful. They don't even really need it.
No.
We're using them here today because we're doing a studio production, but I believe that it will not be long. It won't be long before we can do an entire training. You do it all the time.
I do my entire buyer and listing appointments with nothing but this.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, and we're going to talk about, let's talk about that next, because using your digital listing presentation can help you set yourself apart from that competition. Now, remember, we just talked about how competitive it is. We talked about the market forces and how the Realtor membership's swelling. And so that competition, and I think testimony, as everyone here told us, that it is fierce out there, dog eat dog, that this is a tool to really set yourself apart. So you can use a digital listing presentation to position yourself as an expert, because, Gary, experts use technology, right?
Absolutely.
And they use it masterfully.
Yep.
Experts, when we look at most companies, we look at the companies who are the forerunners in their industry are the ones who are adopting technology and using it. So you can position yourself as an expert just by using and showing it differently. Okay? You're going to show it differently, more polished, more smooth than what your competition is showing up like by using a digital listing presentation. Another thing is, Gary, you talk about this a lot, the old way versus the new way of doing business. And you have a specific dialogue. You want to share that with folks? When you go on your appointments, you talk about the old way versus the new way.
I would prefer to share that when we get into the digital listing presentation, because that's really, that's one thing. I hope you guys are taking notes, because as Chris gets into the digital listing presentation, I'm going to actually share a lot of narratives that I use as we're going through the presentation.
Yeah. So it also puts your client in control, and we'll show you an example of how it does that. And then, of course, using this digital listing presentation, it encourages your client to ask you more questions so that you can be more of a consultant and trusted advisor. Now, we're going to go into the 5 crucial elements in just a second, but the digital listing presentation in our process, right? So we teach the 5-step listing appointment. And so the first of those 5 steps is to ask questions. The second is to inspect the home, and the third is to show the marketing proposal, which is consumer-friendly language for listing presentation. They don't know what a listing presentation is. They don't even know what a listing is.
Which, by the way, I want to tell everybody, we're going to pause right here. Write this down. This is our 5-step listing appointment. Now, we're primarily focusing on the marketing proposal today, but write this down. This is where we're really getting into, we're out of the stats of why. This is the how.
Well, and this is important. This 5-step process eliminates so many of the objections that could potentially arise when you're going on a listing appointment, because this whole process sets it up so that first, you're doing you're asking questions, you're building a connection, you're demonstrating your expertise by inspecting the home long before you even have the conversation about the marketing proposal or the listing presentation. So there are steps that lead up to the marketing proposal so that you can have that pricing conversation and then sign that agreement. So we're going to really focus on showing the marketing proposal, i.e. the digital listing presentation today. And just as a reminder, just as a side note, when you're communicating this with your clients, don't tell them, let me show you a listing presentation. Let me show you the marketing proposal that I have prepared for you. All right, Gary, let's dive in. Let's get into the 5 crucial elements.
Oh, I love this part. I hope you guys, like I said, take notes, and let's make sure we do this right.
All of the slides that we're going to share with you today come from Gary's listing presentation. Yeah, I tried turning it off. I don't know what's going on with that. There we go. All of these slides come from Gary's actual listing presentation and the one that the Goodlife team uses. So you guys are getting a real, this is what we use day in, day out. It's the same listing presentation that Gary used to get the biggest deal of his career. And so let's dive into the first. So the first slide that we're going to share with you today. Now, know that the total number of slides in our listing presentation, digital listing presentation, is actually around 18, I think. But we're going to show 5 today. 5 really important ones that whether you're using a digital listing presentation or any type of presentation, these need to be in here. So this is what you're seeing on the screen there is the first slide of the digital listing presentation. You can see this as welcome to the insert company name. The first, probably huge factor, Gary, is the aesthetic appeal. Can you tell folks about what went into creating a visually aesthetic appeal and why it's so important?
Well, first and foremost, we didn't create this ourselves, right? We hired professionals to do this because that's what they do. And we hired designers to do this, and this is the first slide of our presentation, which, by the way, sets the mood for the entire proposal.
Right. Well, one of the things I like to ask the question is, whatever you're putting in front of your customer or whatever you have, is it working for you or is it working against you? Meaning, is it helping further your cause or is it something that you have to overcome? Now, if you bust out a listing presentation like it was designed in 1982 in PowerPoint 1.1, know that that is working against you because you're going to look antiquated, and the customer, they won't say anything, by the way. They'll just look at it. They might they'll nod their head and say, oh, that's very interesting. But know that it's working against you when you have antiquated design.
Well, you know what they say?
What?
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much. Yeah. So another point on here is not just the aesthetic appeals. Notice the opportunity for customization, right? We place the customer name, that we're going to be working with, the client's name, and we also place the property address. And the reason why that's so important is, Gary, you talked about, remember when the closing, when the title company would have that little black board with the white letters on it? It's the same concept, right?
Just make them feel special. Everybody wants to feel special.
And the beauty of using a digital listing presentation is it doesn't take any effort to change it, meaning you can literally be about to show up to the appointment, quickly type in their name and address in case you forgot, which I wouldn't encourage you to do, by the way. You should have it ready, but just in case, and walk in and have it ready and customized versus, oh, I got to make copies of this and I got to do this. And so customize it so that they can feel special. It's just that fifth star, that added extra touch to know that, so they know that you're paying attention to the details, right? You're paying attention to the details, and that's what that's going to communicate. Yeah. Another thing is, when you're creating your digital listing presentation, is know that the format is different. So you cannot have too much text.
Oh, people want photos. They love the visual beautification and aspects. And so as we go through this presentation, you guys will see a lot of time and attention to detail was focused on a beautiful visual presentation. That's what people want. They don't want to read.
They want high-impact images and the information that makes sense, and the rest is going to be conversational. All right, this is a tool to facilitate conversation, and it does a lot of other things as well, impressing the client, setting them up for the next step in the process. But this is crucial, not too much text. Customize it to the seller and make sure it looks good.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing is, this is a huge one, by the way. What we're going to talk about is online reviews. Now, this slide is related to, we asked the question, why choose us, or they are going to ask the question, why choose us, because that's how we set this up, and we offer a 5-star promise. You want to talk about, how do you talk about this, because there's several different things that happen here. Before you even show up to the listing appointment, we're sending links to the online reviews that are available on our business, and we'll show you where we have them and which ones to focus on. But we're sending links before it even happens. But how do you talk about this?
Well, one thing that I always ask, so in communication and talking about us, what I do is I ask questions, because I want them to actually have that conversation in their head and convince themselves why a 5-star promise is important. And so I ask them, I say, have you ever experienced a 5-star experience? Not a 4-star. Like, I'm talking world-class 5-star experience. And they say, sure. I say, okay, when and where? Most people go back to one brand or two brands. Number one is Nordstrom, and number two is Four Seasons. And which I know I know what they're going to say. And I say, great. Tell me what made that a 5-star experience for you. And they go through it, and I say, well, why is that important to you? I'm always data collecting, because I need to know what their expectations are, what their desires are, what their needs are. And so as we get to this part of the listing presentation or the marketing proposal, I can then address that and say, that is exactly why we promise a 5-star experience to you, because we want and will deliver that same experience to you that you are accustomed to when you're paying a premium price. Note, I just set them up for a premium price when you hire us.
Well, I heard Jason coaching one of our team members the other day, and what he shared was, when you're talking about this slide, when you're talking about a 5-star promise, and when you're talking about that experience, you're setting them up for a couple of different things. One is, you want to let folks know at the very beginning, right? First, you've sent them the link to the online reviews that you have. Mm-hmm. And then when you're having the conversation, you want to mention it, because you want to set it up in the following way. You want them to know that it is your goal, it is your commitment, that you're going to provide this 5-star experience. However, you're also going to need their help in the process. You're going to need their help because you need to know anything that you either have done or that have not done that would jeopardize getting that 5th star.
Absolutely.
When it comes time for them to do that online review. And that's powerful, Gary, right? Because you're enlisting a partner, and you're also letting them know, hey, you're letting them know, this is my commitment, this is my goal. Help me meet my goal by letting me know if I'm doing anything that might jeopardize that 5-star. You're also setting up so that before it's time to get the online review, that you're planting the seed that they're going to provide that online review.
Absolutely.
Which is very important. Now, here's just an example of one of the ones that we use. Now, Gary, where do we have online reviews at? What are the ones that you would suggest everyone to go?
You know, first and foremost, critical. The #1 search program is Google.
Google.
And so, #1, we always request that they review on Google. You know, when we first got started with this, Yelp was bigger in real estate, Zillow, Trulia, etc. Now our primary focus is Google, because most of our clients go to google.com and search our company name, and that's where they find our reviews.
Well, and there's a little bit of search engine optimization love that happens when your customers keep reviewing you on Google, and Google has those reviews because Google will view that as quality information about your business, and so that'll affect. Now, you know, I'm just curious, Gary, what are your thoughts? Because I know there's a lot of controversy over tools like Zillow or tools like Trulia. What are your thoughts on having folks review on those platforms?
Well, it's fine, but here my focus is really having all of our future reviews on Google, because we know, statistically speaking, that's where they're going. And how do we know that? Because we ask. We ask our customers every time, well, how did you hear about us? Well, have you seen our online reviews? Because here's what people do. I don't know about you guys out there, but I always Google. I do a lot of research with any prospective customer or business partner before I have a phone call with them. I go to Facebook and search them up. I go to Google. I read their reviews. If they have no reviews, I instantly go, there might be a problem here. And so if I'm researching everybody I'm doing business with that way, you know your clients are doing it.
Right.
And I ask them, well, how did you hear about us? Well, you know, you guys have 99 reviews on Google, and it's a 4.9 average review. That's pretty incredible. I read the reviews. I want to work with you guys. You know, it used to be, the old way of doing business was they had to get referrals from their friends and family, and they'd ask questions, well, why did you work with them? What did you like about it? Now, we trust third-party reviews more than personal referrals more.
Well, if you guys look at this next slide here, a study have found that 88% of people are actually influenced by online reviews, both positive and negative. So overall, from a positive standpoint, it's 90. You know, if it's a positive review, it has a 90% influence. If it's a negative review, it has an 86% influence. And I think that's a little bit lower, Gary, because people tend to have a little bit of grace. Notice on our reviews for Google, it was 4.9. Very believable. You know, I mean, it was great, but you know, we had, I think there was one review that threw it off, and we resolved that. But so we went from like 3 stars to 4 stars on that one particular transaction. And it was because we had someone who left us, who kind of left a bad experience with our customer. With that said, 88% of people, or 88% are influenced by positive and negative reviews. And furthermore, Gary, you just shared this point. Almost 75% of people trust online reviews just as much as a personal recommendation. You know,
that's because it's untainted.
Right.
Our interpretation is these online reviews are just third-party, unsolicited, and truthful. Like, people are much more willing to do this online because it's very anonymous.
Right. And what happens is, you said it's that third-party validation. You know, because someone might be suspect. You know, when we have these testimonials, I'm not saying that I'm a huge advocate of having testimonials, but you know, some people might be suspect to say, well, I wonder if they gave them a special cut on their commission in order to get that review, or maybe they have some kind of special relationship. When it's online, you know, for good or bad, people tend to believe what's read online, right? I mean, we are influenced. Think of that last time you might have made a purchase on Amazon, and you saw all those reviews, and it either influenced you to make a purchase or you didn't make the purchase, and you would have trusted it just as much as if someone said, hey, I really like this product. Well, and then you go look at the online reviews, and it's just as important as that recommendation that you might have received from someone. So very important to do, right? Very important to talk about, very important to use to improve the entire process. You know, you're sending it beforehand, you are talking about it during the marketing proposal, and then you're getting their support to say if there's anything that jeopardizes it. By the way, having that conversation and reminding them that if there's anything that jeopardizes that 5th star is a phenomenal way to alert you to problems and challenges long before they happen.
Well, not only that, it makes them partially responsible if they're dissatisfied. It's like, well, you remember when I asked you to tell me that you wanted a call on Monday instead of Friday? Well, you didn't tell me that, so I kept calling on Friday because that was my understanding of what a 5th star was to you. So, it instantly gives them responsibility to help you produce that 5-star for them.
And you're reminded, and it's a subtle reminder that you can't read people's minds.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has a little bit different expectation on exactly what they're going to provide or what they expect from, and this just gives them the grace and license to be able to communicate that to you, and buys you or gets you that inside track to be able to give them that 5-star experience. Yeah. So, Gary, let's keep moving on here, because this next slide is probably one of the most powerful slides in the presentation.
Oh, I love this one.
And this slide, break this down for us, Gary. I mean, when you're looking at this, break down just what's on here and then how you talk about this.
Well, so what we have here are statistics that we pull from the MLS for Austin as an average, and you can do this wherever you are. And we track our own internal statistics as well, which we can do this on MLS through pulling a report about our brokerage. And what we track are the list price versus the sales price and the list number of days to sell. And so we track that, and all we do is remember, we don't have a lot of text here. It's mainly visuals. And I'm not explaining on this what it is, because what I want to do is, as we get to this, I want my client to start asking me questions. Oh, well, why is your average so much better? Oh, I love that question. What does that mean to me? And basically I say, this is our average performance against the marketplace. And when they see that, instant credibility, instant value proposition, and they instantly start trusting that I'm going to market and sell their house much better than an average Austin realtor.
I think there's a few things here. This really communicates the performance advantage that you have to offer them. What you translate that into the customer's language is, what's in it for me?
Yep.
This is what's in it for you. I'm going to get your home sold faster, and I'm going to get you more money, and this is proof that I'm going to do that and how I do it consistently. It also shows your market expertise, because if someone doesn't share this information, someone might, the seller's going to assume that they don't know this information. Yeah. If you don't put it in front of them, they're going to assume that, oh, they must not know.
And if the competition goes in there and shows them this, the more you show like this of your knowledge, the more they're going to trust you, and the more they're going to distrust somebody else. It's like, oh, so-and-so didn't show me that. Obviously, I need to work with you.
Well, and it's interesting how national statistics and even local statistics, data, whether you're a data person or not, people tend to credit more trust, because it's, again, I'm not making this stuff up. This is just what the data says. This is just what that does. That demonstrates your market expertise. It shows that how you have more expertise around this because you even know the stats. People expect experts to know stats off the top of their head. Well, you might not know off the top, but you have them right here on the slide to show them.
And if you take one thing away from this webinar, it must be this slide.
Yeah. Because
this, and if you don't know how to calculate this, we'll show you how to calculate that in our coaching club, but you must know this statistic. And by the way, if your stats are worse than your average realtor in Austin, then you got some work to do. But that's okay.
Chances are, if you're on this set, chances are, if you're on here, you're going to be better than the overall average, because this average takes into account people who maybe do one deal a year, right? So this is factoring all that into it.
Well, and plus, Debbie just wrote, what if I don't have that many transactions under my belt? That's okay, because this is an average. This doesn't show how many transactions. Right. This is your average. And what we teach a lot about in our coaching club is how to get that average up, to improve that, and how do you get better reviews online?
Well, this slide also sets it up to, a common thing that's going to happen, with seller objections. Now, although we're going to alleviate so many of them, someone might encounter the question or the objection of, oh, I thought my home would be worth more than that, or the other agent that I interviewed said that they were going to list my home for this much. This slide shows them, and if you know how to talk about this slide, of course, shows them one, it cuts that, it just swipes that objection right away, and it shows them exactly what's in it for them and how you will provide that advantage by working with them. All right, so let's move on to the next slide, because we talked about this in terms of what do sellers want from us, and the number of things. Remember, the number one thing they want us to do is to market the home to potential buyers. So you have to include, I can't implore this enough, you have to include where you're going to market the home and how you're going to market the home, because otherwise they won't know that that's what you're going to do. Here's another thing, Gary. People expect us to be online, right? They expect us to be online.
Yeah.
So, talk about how we market. When you're having this conversation, I'm sure you like to just put it out there and then sort of coach and advise. Any specific tips on this one?
Well, sure. Number one is I always ask the client, before I get to this slide, I always ask them, if you were to wake up today and say, you know what, Gary, I think I want to buy a house, my question is, where are you going to search for that? Mm-hmm. And normally it's one of these, and we need to add Google to this, but it's normally one of these search features here. And with that, I say great, because that is exactly where we market. And then I also ask, as you get into this, what are some of the features of the house? What do you want to see online that would entice you to call that realtor to go see the house? And we can talk about that a little bit later. But primarily, it's like, where are you going to search? And they tell me, and I say, great. Advance to the slide, and I say, that's why we market there, because 98% of buyers are searching online for the house that they're going to purchase before they contact a realtor.
And so you want to be where they're at. So you need to be where they're at, and you can even use this as an opportunity to educate your seller, right? So you're educating them.
Yeah.
Right? You're educating that we have to be online because that's where the buyers are going to be at. And here's the venues where we have to show up. Right? So again, furthering your expertise. And there's also a little bit of brand association. So if you're putting popular, if the consumer knows these brands and they know that these are the services that you're using to market the home, then there's some brand association where there's some trust from that brand being translated to you in that process. So Gary, let's dive into this next one. So this next one, I will share with you guys. This next one might make you feel a little uncomfortable, right? If you're and the reason it's going to make you feel uncomfortable is because we're going to talk a little bit about social media. Now, whether you're on social media or you're not on social media really doesn't matter, because what we're talking about is what the consumer, where they expect us to be. And I'm not talking about having a Facebook page and I'm talking about how you're going to market the home using social media, because consumers now, they're on social media, right?
Yes, they are.
And so if you're an expert in marketing a home, they're going to expect you to be here as well, right?
Well, not only that, think about this, is in your network, how many people are you connected to, let's just say on Facebook?
I don't know, I got like a couple hundred.
Oh,
150, I don't know.
On Facebook? Oh, thousands.
Oh, well, our business has thousands.
Yeah, so on Facebook, how many friends do you have? How many likes do you have on your Facebook page? Think about that. Think about how many friends your customers have. You need to start thinking about the viral effect of social media and how you can effectively market that, and then explain that to your customer here. It's like, the reason social media is so critical is that a new statistic shows that people are on social media more than they are watching TV these days. That's critical. And so what that means is, well, you got to be in front of them. And if you can't be directly in front of them, you get there by association through other friends. And we can show you how to do that. But the old way is just relying on people to call their realtor and see a house, or rely on open houses, or rely on signs and flyer boxes, which I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because really we need to be able to expose that home every which way we can. I'm just saying I know where the people are, and if that's where they are, that's where I'm going to be.
Well, and here's the thing. With this slide, you might say, I don't have a YouTube channel, and I don't have a Pinterest. That's okay, because there's two different ways to talk about this slide. Gary, I love the fact, when we were building this, we did some training on this recently, and when we got to this particular portion of the training, Gary said, well, you don't have to be in all these different places, because your customer might be in those places, and what you can say is, hey, I'm going to market via my social media venues, such as Twitter and Facebook, or whatever ones that you're currently using, and if you are on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Google+, or any of the social media properties that you, as my customer, know that you can open this up to your network as well, because there's a good chance that someone you know might know someone who might be the next potential buyer.
Absolutely.
And it's just continue to distribute that information. Now, here's what I'm not telling you is to go out and get all these properties, social media properties, set up and running right now. I would encourage you to have at least one, though. I would encourage you to have at least one, maybe two. My preference is, of course, I'm a big advocate of using Facebook because of all the different tools that it offers businesses to be able to reach consumers and to be able to ensure that your message gets in front of them. But whatever one you're currently using, make sure you're going to talk about that, because it's important that you address people are expecting that you're going to be doing the new marketing. This is, for example, it's not just social media. This is just a form of marketing now. It's an acceptable form of marketing. And now it's not just acceptable, it's expected that you're going to use this or have this incorporated into your marketing campaign to help sell the home.
Yep.
All right, so let's keep moving. So, oops, wrong one. So you just spent the last hour with us today, right? I'm looking at the time here. It's 11:58. So you've just spent just under an hour with us today.
It's 58 minutes.
58 minutes. And you've learned how to use a digital listing presentation. We covered some very specific ways on how you can what sellers want and how to use this listing presentation. And by now, you know the information we shared with you will help you in getting more listings. And what we've covered is Gary's exact system, and it's not just Gary's, it's day in, day out at Goodlife Realty, what we use to get listings, to work with sellers, to get more referred business, and to close more of the appointments that we receive.
You know, one thing I want to point out is it's not just my exact system. So I've been selling real estate since 2007. Christina has been selling real estate since 2007. Jason Edwards has been selling since 2008. It is all of those years and all of our combined experience that has created this system, of which I think we just showed 5 of the 18 slides.
Yes.
That is the proof of knowledge, and that's what I used to get that high dollar listing. And by the way, I have another one coming up that I just went on this listing appointment with. I used exactly what we showed you and what we said to be able to get those listings.
Awesome. So if you'd like help implementing everything that we've gone over, we've got the no hype breakdown of what we have to offer. We've got the digital listing presentation power pack upgraded. So we've just spent a lot of time taking our digital listing presentation power pack, which is something that's been available in the past, and we've upgraded it. Now, the digital listing presentation power pack is specifically designed to help you build your digital listing presentation, hone your listing appointment presentation skills, and to remove seller objections. So here's the thing. If you want to impress clients, get more referral listings, if you want to be able to block your competition from getting your listings, what's really rightfully your listings in many cases, and you want to be a listing leader in your market, then what we've got is specifically designed for you. And here's how we do it. We've got 5 different modules. We've got, within this digital listing presentation power pack, we've got the digital listing presentation templates.
And that's all 18 slides.
That's all 18 slides in both Keynote and PowerPoint formats. We've got training and tutorials on how to actually open that up in Keynote and modify your listing, the digital listing presentation template that we provide. So if you guys like the style, you don't have to go pay a lot of money to go have that created for you. We've done it for you.
And I got to tell you, we went back to the developer and designer of this for almost 12 months because we wanted to refine it and perfect it. And we actually asked a lot of sellers, you know, what do you think about this? And we got feedback on it, and that is what we invested into creating that digital listing presentation.
We also have a slide, this is brand new training by the way, a slide-by-slide tutorial on how to talk about every one of the 18 slides that are in our digital listing presentation. This is brand new. We were just in the studio recording this. We just finished editing it, so it's never been released before. So
We've got a slide-by-slide tutorial, which for me, Gary, was a lot of fun. I think we'll dive into a little bit more what's included with that. We also have 5 instructional videos outlining the 5-step listing appointment role plays. So we have instructional videos where Gary and I went into the studio and we role played acting like a seller and a real estate professional, and that way we can show you exactly those 5 different steps and how you would present. We also have a little section, a little module on swiping away seller objections.
I love that. I love that section.